Hi, Rose here. Thank you for clicking on this video. Please make sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons to help this video go out to a larger audience. The information in this video is something that really needs to be shared, so thank you in advance for your help in doing this. Recently, I had the privilege of speaking to Ed Narayan. Ed was an elder from New Zealand that actually stepped down after what he found when the Watchtower organization told all elders to destroy records. These records included statements and details from victims of child sexual abuse within the congregation. Ed was stunned and disgusted at what he found. After he stepped down, he eventually completely left the organization. Ed felt so strongly about his convictions of the wrongfulness of what was being done with the documents that could actually help in the conviction of child sexual abuse offenders that he went public with what he knew. I'll link the news articles he was in the description for you. Hopefully you enjoy our conversation. Again, please help us by sharing this video with others so we can get this news out to more than those in New Zealand. First, Ed, thank you so much for coming on my channel. I know you've got some really important information that you want to share with us, what's going on in New Zealand. But before we go into that, let's get to know you a little bit better. How did you come into the organization?
Well, that one's pretty easy, but I do note your use of organization and not truth. So I never liked the word the truth, even when I was studying. But yeah, to talk about coming into the organization, I was a single 21-year-old. It was 1991, and this pretty girl knocked on my door. And she looked into my eyes, told me who she was, who she represented, and offered me a Bible study. So I mean, really, there was only one conclusion, one answer. And the answer is, yes, I'll take a Bible study. So that's where it all started. But I still have to say, prior to that, Jehovah's Witnesses had been knocking on the doors for quite a while. I wasn't interested at all because it was, from a young person's perspective, old ladies. So it didn't interest me, you see, and I'd take the magazines for 50 cents just so they would leave my door. But of course, once you start taking magazines, they come back.
Take that, remind everybody that we were a publishing corporation. It was a publishing company at one time. They sold magazines door to door for money.
Yes, that was
subscriptions.
Yeah,
and subscriptions.
That's the one. And it was 50 cents initially, which was still quite a lot of money back in the 90s. And then it went up to $1 once I became a witness a few years later. So yeah, and saying it's very disrespectful to say it was the old ladies coming to my door. When you're a young 20-year-old, a 40-year-old looks old.
They're old.
Now I'm 54, and so I will be, to the young 20-year-olds, I will look old, but I don't feel old. So that was
all relevant. Well, to make me feel really old, I was placing magazines at 10 cents. 10 cents each. It was 20 cents for the both of them. So I did not know how I was going to do the 25 cents. I thought that was so much money to ask. It was such a big jump. So who was the young lady that came to your door?
It wasn't my wife. I won't name her. And in all these years that I've told the story, I have never told her. So she was the first one that I studied with. Yes, so it was quite an interesting one. And I do have to also say that prior to that, I had been searching for something, and being brought up in a more or less Christian country. The only thing I knew was the God of the Bible and Jesus and that sort of thing, and exposed to Sunday school when I was young, and they still had some sort of religious instruction back at school. So it tells you how old I am as well. Well, I've already mentioned I'm 54 this year. 21 when I was contacted. So she knocked on the door. offered the Bible study. I said yes, and she said she'd come back certain time, certain date. so, so being someone who just spoke off the top of my head and was enchanted by this young woman. I'll say woman because girl sounds bad. This young woman. I actually regretted saying yes because growing up and going to the technical institute that I went to at the time, everyone spoke badly of Jehovah's Witnesses. You know, don't talk to Jehovah's Witnesses. They wrote their own Bible. They'll suck you into their religion. And here I was getting sucked in because this nice-looking woman came and knocked on my door.
A pretty face brought you in.
It did, yeah. And so I thought, okay, I regret that I said yes. I shut all on the day and time, or 15 minutes before, I shut all the windows in the house, locked the house up, and I went and hid in the garage. Because if I were to hide under my bed, they might look under the window and see me. So that was my reasoning. So I waited till they came on time, and I was peeping out a little hole between, you know, the tilted door and the garage, and I saw them go towards the front door, and then saw them leave. I waited about 10 minutes, went inside, opened all the windows, opened the doors, was sprawled out on the couch. 1 hour later, there was a knock at the door. So they came back, and yeah, I was too polite to say no. So that's where the study started. But then another piece of information, 2 weeks prior, I'd stopped studying with Mormons. So yeah,
wow.
I studied with Mormons. They were as good as the witnesses at knocking on the door and doing a presentation, and even their teaching was as good as the witnesses. You know,
That's what they do. Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's how it came in. I came in.
So you came into the organization.
Mm.
You were baptized. How long after?
I was baptized in 93, so about between 2 and 2.5 years later.
Okay. And then when did you meet your wife?
I met her probably about half a year before I got baptized. So, and that was because my friend, who was a witness, married my wife's cousin, who's a witness, and they match made us. So we met at the wedding, at their wedding, and we knew what was happening. We didn't like it, so we sort of, like, when we were introduced, we sort of spurned each other, almost like, I'm not interested in you, you're not interested in me, and that was it. But later that night we went back to a relative's house, all the wedding party, and for some reason my to-be wife and myself hit it off. Yeah, it was.
And then the rest is history.
Rest is history. Yeah, it is.
How many children did you have?
We ended up having three boys. One's 26, which I think you know that one, who did the YouTube video. Another one's 22, another one 12. So,
okay.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about your son that did the YouTube video. Now, I know that you and your wife became very strong. And you were an elder, right? And you brought them up according to the organization's policies and everything like that. What happened with your son?
Yeah, he was the first one to question things, but we never knew. We didn't know a thing until basically till close to when he got disfellowship. So we were the what you would call the typical or the example witness family. All of us were doing well. I was appointed as an elder because of my family, because of my wife and how well my children were doing. And we did well in the field service with our meeting parts, with everything that needed to be done, as all those outward works.
You checked all the boxes.
Checked all the boxes, got appointed as an elder, and we had no idea what was going on with our young man. We only found out after he was disfellowshipped why things went the way they went. And even still, we didn't know fully until he actually did his video on YouTube. So
I'm going to link that into the description so that other people can see his video, because it's quite a touching video, what he went through.
It is, yeah. And we didn't know that he went through it that bad, but he did at one stage with the disfellowshipping that happened. I, of course, couldn't carry on as an elder. That was my own feeling, my own conscience. And so I resigned as an elder at that stage. But it was really hard, because you're taking that. He was our first child, our firstborn, and here we were sacrificing him on the altar. I'm laughing, but it wasn't a funny situation. We were sacrificing him on the altar of Jehovah's Witness teachings on disfellowshipping and shunning.
Now, how do you mean you were sacrificing him? In what way?
Basically him moving out of home and us virtually stopping all contact. And that was really hard. I was questioning things in those times because it didn't feel right. It's meant to be a loving provision from God, and yet, you didn't feel love. You felt
Seems anything but love.
Anything but love, and it even doesn't make sense. It even doesn't make sense. Whatever witness teaching there is, prodigal son, etc., etc., it just doesn't fit with the whole shunning that we're actually supposed to do. So that was really hard, especially for my wife, given it was her first child. She had a special bond with our eldest boy at the time. Well, she had that special bond, first child. They spent so much time together while I was working, and yeah, she felt heartbroken. She said, very heartbroken. So, yeah, painful time, very difficult.
Yeah. How long did that last?
Well, we looked at it the other day. He got disfellowshipped. He was disfellowshipped in 2017, and he was reinstated July 2018. So it didn't last that long, but it felt like forever. And during that time, we actually left the home we were living in. We sold up and we moved to a new town, new congregation, because it didn't feel like a home anymore. No good memories there. So that's where we ended up in the next congregation, where our boy got reinstated. Well, his name's Cameron. It's in the video.
It's in the video, right. And so you're in this new congregation. Now, I know that your wife was really going through a hard time during this period.
She was. Yeah, she was going through a very hard time. And obviously, I think for a mum, it's definitely more emotional, given that it's a boy, a male. I don't know what it is, but it seems, I've got no evidence other than anecdotal that mums seem to be more cozy isn't the right word, but they seem to have more attachment to the boys than the girls. And I could be wrong because we've never had girls, but it seems like fathers are the ones who are soft and with the girls and let them have everything, whereas mums are soft with the boys and let them have everything, and dads are
It's true. I felt a special protection for my son. I always felt like I had to protect my son.
Yeah. And so at one stage we did allow him back home, because he got to the point, which everyone can see in his YouTube video, where he basically wanted to commit suicide, and he did it a number of times. We didn't know that, but he rang up one time, and he actually, my wife saw a number of missed phone calls from him. So she actually called him, and he was talking to her, and he was absolutely he started sobbing on the phone, the real heartbreak sobbing. And my wife came and told me about his sobbing and how he was feeling, and I said, he just has to come home. So we, forget witness teachings, he was coming home, because as I said to some of the elders then, how can I knock on people's door and talk about, using agape love to knock on other people's door when I won't even show any love whatsoever to my child, especially if he committed suicide. I would never knock on doors again. So either way, the outcome would be I'm not going to be a witness after all of that. And I've wasted one person's life. I've sacrificed him on that witness altar. So yeah, that was, I'm glad.
If I'm not mistaken, you had problems because you allowed him back in your home.
We did, yeah. And we didn't know that at the time, because I'd approached the elders in the congregation we were in, and I said, we have to bring him back because of this and that. But we found out once I became secretary in the new congregation, because I read my letter of introduction, which I have sent you, that basically they thought I was unstable and all of these sorts of things, and it was to do with Cameron. The letter seemed to me to be more character assassination than anything, and the elders never addressed it with me. They just wrote it in a letter that was supposedly only going to be seen by the elders in the next congregation. So that was quite sad. It really annoyed me when I found that out. Even though I was secretary, I still, in a way, loved those brothers because we were actually friends. So why they wouldn't address it with me and just put that in a letter, I don't know.
You had to find it out the hard way.
Yeah,
They sent to your new congregation and how it was negative, and then 6 months later you had this glowing review.
Yes, yeah. So that was the other side of it. It went from being totally negative and not addressing anything with me to being, oh yes. So our elders, the elders in the congregation I was in before I disassociated, they wanted to appoint me as an elder, so they wrote a letter back to the old congregation asking about, basically, they wanted to know whether that congregation would be happy, or those elders would be happy, appointing me as an elder in this new congregation. And when you read the letter, you can see they were over the moon about it, basically. So it just didn't make sense that you had two sides of a coin. It was just absolutely crazy. But I was.
Is that what made you start questioning?
No, because that happened after I started questioning, that I became secretary and read that letter. So yeah, that didn't make me start questioning at all. It was just one of those things. Even though I was annoyed that letter came out, I still loved the brothers, and that has to be in quotes, because to me, love in the organization is it's almost like a forced love. You have to love your brothers and sisters. I couldn't go around saying I hate them. Right. And I didn't hate them because
I can't resent them. I can't. Yeah. No, yeah. I know. Yeah. But it's hard to not be resentful over the hypocrisy that they showed you. Your so-called friends. Your so-called friends.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were questioning. Your son went through all of this. Your wife was going through a very, very difficult time. You got something from the organization as a body of elders. Can you tell me about that?
Yes, with the October 2021 Shepherd the Flock of God. So we're talking a year or two, year and a half to 2 years has passed now. In 2021, with the release of the October 2021 Shepherd the Flock of God book, the Elders book, there was an addendum with all the, how would you say, document retention policies on it, and that included destroying documents that were no longer, or met the requirements in the yeah, in that particular.
What do you mean by destroying records, destroying documents? What exactly did they tell you to do?
So any documents such as letters of introduction, once they had expired in terms of the retention policy, then they were to be destroyed or shredded, is the word. But that I have to say that didn't include anything related to CSA. So that was a good thing. But anything else that met that retention, such as letters of introduction, unless it was a letter of introduction which had allegations of CSA in it, then that would be kept. So that was good. Yeah.
Do they still keep those records?
That I can't tell you today. Today I can't tell you that, but when I was in, yes, those were kept.
Just locked up?
Just locked up in a sealed envelope. Anything to do with CSA goes into a sealed envelope with "do not destroy" written on it, and a few other things. And it's normally put into there's normally a place in the Kingdom Hall where all of the files are placed. And then for us, we had within that area, we had another secure location for things like the sealed envelopes. And so,
okay, so congregations at that time still had documentation regarding anybody that had committed child sexual abuse or was a victim of child sexual abuse. Am I correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, now you told me you found something while you were destroying records.
Yeah, so we did find, but there was in the sealed envelopes. So here's the thing: the instructions in the SFL, or Shepherd the Flock of God book. I'll just call it SFL from now on. The SFL book actually do state that the secretary once a year, and it uses January as the month, to go through those records, and any that meet that document retention policy or have expired under it, then they can be destroyed, and you can take another elder in with you. So I actually went into the Kingdom Hall with the coordinator at the time. So I guess depending on your viewers, the coordinator, the Kobe, the coordinator of the body of elders, we just call him the Kobe, in New Zealand. So I went into the hall with him, and we looked through all and you'll see why I'm laughing shortly. We looked through all those envelopes, and we are allowed to open them. So the secretary can open those even sealed envelopes. And I did find 4 envelopes with the contents related to CSA. So there were 4 of those, and I partially read some of them, but I didn't read the whole lot at the time. So those ones we sealed up again. So we didn't destroy anything from within them. There were lots of notes inside them. So we just left all that together because we had no instruction to destroy those notes or anything related to CSA. And we sealed those up.
So the sealed envelopes, not everything was sealed. It was just something that, what would be sealed? I guess I'm asking, what would be sealed?
Oh, I guess records of disfellowshipping, CSA, reproof, that sort of thing. So that's normally in a sealed envelope.
Okay, now that's new because I'm under I think a lot of people are under the understanding that the organization had people destroy all records regarding child sexual abuse so that they couldn't be summoned or whatever by the courts. So can you explain that?
That one I can't affirm that one, because that's certainly not the case with the New Zealand addendum for document destruction or for the retention policy. So if I haven't already sent you a copy of that retention policy, I'll send it, and you'll be able to read in there exactly what can be destroyed and what can't be destroyed. I'm not sure if it's the same in other countries.
But these these do not destroy record, do they have a timestamp on them too, like everything else, only after a year, or are you supposed to keep those?
When it comes to anything with do not destroy in CSA is basically retained. There is no end date for them. They're just
Oh,
retained.
so they
in the
do
conservation
still
plan.
have them in New
Yeah.
Zealand.
In New
Okay.
Zealand, yes.
That's good to know.
As at the time I left. So
And what was the year that you left?
I left in April 2022 is when
Okay.
I'm sure that's when I put in my disassociation letter. But
So
I resigned as an elder in February 2022, 2 months before.
So just over a year ago. So just over a year ago. Okay, so you found out some other things, didn't you, about certain ones in your congregation?
Yeah, that there were four either convicted or alleged pedophiles, and we hadn't been told. So we had young, or should I say young people in our family, and we were only one of the many families in the congregation, and I'd never been told from the moment I stepped foot in that congregation up until the point that I became secretary and was privy to those notes. So even as an elder, I wasn't made aware of those. That's quite interesting. The only thing I do have to say, there was one elder, and to me, he was doing this off his own, conscience, off his own bat, we say in New Zealand. But he actually did tell me one time when we were working in field service that such and such was a convicted pedophile. And I thought, all right, we've actually invited this guy over for dinner, and we were having things to do with him, and we didn't even know. So once we found that out, and I told my wife, we actually, being the good witnesses we were, we didn't spurn him or anything, because theoretically all of that had been dealt with by the elders, because we trust the elders, we trust they know what they're doing, and they wouldn't have told us if they didn't need to. But of course, as you and your viewers may already know, the elders shouldn't be telling the publishers anything unless the service department tells them that they can say something to family heads, only to family heads.
They can't share any confidential matters. And even then, a lot of the family heads in the congregation aren't notified that have young children.
Yeah, they're only notified if the branch says that the elders can notify them. So that was absolutely crazy to me. In all the years that I've been an elder previously, in the 3 different congregations I've been in, it hit me hard because of CSA. So if you, I guess there's what made me start to question the organization, and that really began in late 2019, early 2020, before the COVID lockdowns here in New Zealand. My wife and I were doing carts at the local, I guess you'd call it a market. It was on the main street of the town, and we were doing carts there, and someone walked up to the carts and they said, "What's your opinion on Jehovah's Witness, the CSA?" I'll use the word CSA so it doesn't get tagged in YouTube. "What do you think, or what's your opinion on CSA amongst the Jehovah's Witnesses?" And my look at the time, if I could look back on myself, was we have a saying called a stunned mullet here in New Zealand. I don't know if you know what that is, but you can Google that, stunned mullet.
Just a shocked look.
Just shocked look. And because I hadn't heard anything up to that point. And if I had, it was just water off a duck's back, because the media is negative. You can't trust the media. People are just trying to say, they're saying bad things about witnesses. So he said that, and I was processing it, and it must have been like an eternity, because then he said, no comment, and walked away. And as he was walking away, I said, I don't know anything about it. I haven't heard anything. And he said, well, you should, because they're your people. So I processed that all that afternoon, and I even started to search. So as I said, this was pre-COVID lockdown, early 2020, and I went online. I was shocked to see the number of hits that came up with Jehovah's Witnesses and CSA. And I thought, okay, I can't believe what I'm reading, because that's what I've been told. So what I'll do is I'll just pick one, and I'll go to see if there's something in court documents, an actual government website. So I happened to pick one of the cases, which I think was one of the first there in the US. I forget the town name, I forget who the person was involved. But
was it Candace Conti?
Oh, I'm not even sure if it was that. I know the name, but I could search it up later and find the documents again. But went onto the court website, downloaded the transcripts, and I read everything word for word, and even going over it again. It took me 4 hours to read all the transcripts, because I wanted to read absolutely everything. And I was shocked just over that one case, and I thought, it can't be right. This can't be right. Maybe it's a one-off. Maybe the elders who dealt with it weren't following the instructions from the branch/governing body. But then I did further searching on other government websites and found more documents, and it was, that was crazy. It was, it did shock me, but I was still in, and I still thought it was Jehovah's organization. But that's when I stumbled on the Australian Royal Commission, the ARC, and I listened to the videos on YouTube, and read the court transcripts as well. So that took a long time, but I was really, really disappointed in the elders that dealt with it from a congregation level. For the stuff that's online on YouTube for the Australian Royal Commission, to me they were almost like buffoons. They weren't. They were circus characters in there. They couldn't answer the questions properly, or wouldn't. They hadn't read the documentation that the courts had sent through to them so that they could get some more background. And they were just answering off the top of their heads, and they couldn't remember things. And I thought, these guys are just really bad, and they're a bad witness for the organization. So there you go. I'm still fully in. Then the next set of videos went on to the who was it, the branch lawyer and the service department overseer at the time. And I thought, okay, these guys are a lot better, but they're still not that great. And I think the branch lawyer even made an admission at one stage that he would do something differently, but because of the he's under certain guidelines, so he's got to follow those. So I don't know whereabouts in the video it was, but you can find that if you listen closely to him. And then, still having my blinkers on that it is still God's organization, Jeffrey Jackson came on, and I actually thought he was absolutely fantastic. He knew the scriptures, he had the words to answer, he knew the policies, and I thought he's just saved Jehovah's organization. And
that is so funny, because that was the opposite I had.
Yeah,
it was the complete opposite. I was just like shocked, because all I thought was he was lying. He's not, when he was saying it's not in my purview, and that's not where it really happens, about disfellowshipping, and he hadn't even taken the time to read anything that he was supposed to be up there talking about. None of the elders did. They didn't take the time to actually read what had happened to those kids and why they were up there. And that really took me back. Yeah,
so it's strange, isn't it, that I didn't see that. I'd seen the buffoons at the start. Hopefully I don't get a lawsuit for that. And then I'd seen Jeffrey Jackson, and they were like total contrast. So I didn't even pick up on any of that for the first time through. And Yeah, so I just thought he'd saved Jehovah's organization. So that was early 2020. And so not much happened between then. And as I've already mentioned, I didn't step down until February 2022. So you're talking nearly 2 years.
So you were still really in.
I was still really in, even after all of that. But like I said, it wasn't until the October 2021 SFL book that I really started questioning things and really started
About the documents being destroyed.
Yeah, and so the documents being destroyed, that was one thing. I understood retention policies, because being in IT, you need retention policies. Otherwise, you're just building up mountains and mountains of information. So some things do have to be destroyed because they're no longer relevant. Tax department records only need to be kept for 7 years in New Zealand, so they can be destroyed. There is reasons for retention policies, but it wasn't just the retention policies. It was that with the October 2021 SFL book, there were no more, when it came to the S77 forms, which is the notification of disfellowshipping, etc., with that, there were no more summary notes to be placed in the envelope, and tying that in with all elders' personal notes to be destroyed, then I suddenly thought about the victims in that case, that moving forward, if the victims couldn't find justice in the congregation and they went to the courts and the courts wanted or subpoenaed documents from the congregation, all they're going to get is possibly an S77 form with no victim's name on it, only a perpetrator's name, the date, the elders' names on there, and that's it. No summary notes, no nothing tying that alleged perpetrator through to a victim.
To victims. So basically what you're telling me, because we were talking about earlier how they don't destroy the sealed envelopes, do not destroy, but the only thing that's in there is no information, because the elder bodies were told to destroy their summary, any notes that they took. Am I correct? And to destroy any summaries of what happened, and the victim's name wasn't put on there. So there was nothing to tie. If the courts came after anything, there was no proof in the records.
That's right. And that was my thought on it. And so that really got me down, because the victims would have no justice, and they'd be in a congregation where all an alleged perpetrator has to do is say they're repentant and make the elders think that they're repentant, and the elders just maybe reprove them. Or if there's no two witnesses, then they're still part of the congregation. And that's just absolutely crazy. So the victim gets further persecution because the perpetrator or the alleged perpetrator is in the same kingdom as them. And so, just thinking the mental stress on them. So for me, it's all been about the victims, and that's one of the reasons why I am showing my face, and I have gone forward to the New Zealand Royal Commission as well, and made sure that I'm not anonymous, and with an investigative reporter here in New Zealand as well. So yeah, the victims I really feel for. So what happened once in my mind I had put all that together was I decided I wanted to resign as an elder, due to my conscience. My Bible-trained conscience wouldn't allow me to continue. So of course, when you want to resign, normally 2 elders are appointed by the body of elders to talk to you about why and go through the reasons. So I had a meeting with them. And that meeting, they asked me why I wanted to resign. I did have on there quite a few things, but basically what it came back to was that I wanted to resign on account of my Bible-trained conscience. And when does policy or procedure, which is man-made, override Bible-trained conscience? And when does one scripture override another? It was quite an interesting meeting. So that one, yes, it's got my letter of resignation in that whole document. and you can read some of my reasoning. Some of it may not make sense to people unless they've been elders and they know how things work, because there's reference to the Shepherd the Flock of God book, and there's certain ways that it's worded that maybe only elders would understand, but it's all in there. And that was quite difficult to do, because here I was actually going against basically an organization. So there was,
You were going against their policy.
it was their policy.
You disagreed with their policy.
Yeah, and it was only the one policy, and that was to do with destroying notes for, when it came to S77 and sealed envelopes. So one thing I do have to say in regards to that with the sealed envelopes, when it comes to CSA, that there are other things that can go into that envelope for release, but that basically has to come from the branch or letters of introduction. So for me, it was like those will be existing cases, won't they? The letter of introduction comes from another congregation that's dealt with it. So what actually will make it in there in the end, besides the cut down S77 form with no summary notes, may be a mention from the branch, and we don't know what the branch will put in their letters. So during my meeting with the two brothers to discuss my resignation, I did say to them, can we as a body send an email off to the branch and ask the questions that I've asked to get them answered from the branch? And they basically said, you'll have to send it as an individual. We don't want to send it as a body. Which,
They give you a reason?
No, no reason. But that basically came from my friend. Well, we were all friends. So I'll say we were all friends in speech marks. But we were friends, and this friend, I'd worked with him a lot. We were the two elders in the Hindi group, because we were part of the Hindi language group, and he was the one asking me whether I wanted to be an elder again and all of that sort of thing. We were in the Hindi group, but he was also a substitute circuit overseer. So when he said for me, that I should send, just for me to send it off as an individual, it sort of rang alarm bells in my head that maybe he knew something that I didn't. And anyway, I sent the questions off as an individual, and the reply I got back was really, where the direction is clear, follow it, and reference to a Watchtower about being obedient, one of those Watchtowers, being obedient even if it doesn't make sense. But you'll see that in the part of the letter as well. And that
so you didn't get any answer. You didn't get any.
No, nothing.
Just be obedient.
Just be obedient. And anyway, the outcome of all of that was that we had another meeting, and I brought up the same points. Because of my Bible trained conscience, I don't want to serve as an elder in the congregation. And still, once again, when does policy and procedure, or man-made policies and procedure, override Bible trained conscience? And when does one scripture override another? Because we talked about a few scriptures, Romans 13, where you have, was it Romans 13 where you have differing opinion? No, it's Romans 14 about not passing judgment on differing opinions. So can't I have my own Bible trained conscience opinion? And then Romans 13 about being obedient to the authorities. And one interesting thing I found there, Romans 13, our Bible has put in there relative, they stand in their relative positions. That's actually not there in other Bibles, and it's not in there when you look at the Greek interlinear, when you look at the scripture side by side. It's they're put in their place by God. They're ordained by God.
The authorities are put there in place by God.
But we say,
and they're not to be, and we are not to, correct me, because it's been a while since I read that scripture, that we are not to use this to do anything wrong or to commit anything wrong. That's in the same scripture, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So we've put in the word relevant. Or not relevant. What's the word for relative places by God? And so we've actually dumbed down the standing of the authorities. So in doing that, we're actually going against the word of God. But, you know, I'd never seen that before because I've never really compared scriptures. But yeah, so to me, even though in New Zealand it's not compulsory to report, we've always been taught as witnesses that our moral standards and everything should be high above what the world has. So if it's not law to report in this country, then we should report because our morals are higher. And that's, yeah, it is quite sad when the elders book will say things like, if the Kingdom Hall is vandalized, then call the authorities. If there's someone who's making trouble in the Kingdom Hall, call the authorities.
The car is broken into in the parking lot, call the authorities, file a report.
Yeah.
But when it comes to child sexual abuse, call back east, call New York.
Yep, call the branch, and that's where you go, and you put all the emphasis on the parents. It's up to the parents to call the authorities. The elders won't do anything about it. Yet elders will enforce laws within the congregation. They're meant to be the fathers of the congregation. They're meant to be the shepherds of the congregation. But when it comes to, and they'll disfellowship you for smoking, they'll disfellowship you for immorality. But when it comes to the immorality of CSA, then it's up to you to do something about it. And all they will do is address that person. And if there's no two witnesses, what can they do? Because we have the two witness rule. So really we, in terms of CSA, our morals are lower than the world. They're just lower. I mean, even
I've actually talked to people who were told by their elders that if they went to the authorities, that they could be disfellowshipped because they were bringing reproach upon Jehovah. That nothing was done in the congregation. They had done their due diligence or whatever it is. They had checked into it. Either the brother or sister, because it happens to both brothers and sisters, the brother and sister was repentant, or there weren't the two witnesses to back the story of the victim. So the parents are told not to do anything. And then if they do, the victim and their family are the ones that get in trouble, which is really sad. Which brings us, with all of that, what's going on in New Zealand right now?
Yeah, so
this Royal Commission.
Yeah, so New Zealand has a Royal Commission, and that was started in 2018, and it's called Abuse and Care. So it's about young people, children, young people, and adults. What has happened to them in state or faith-based care, and that includes things like abuse and CSA. So that's been going on since 2018. There's been a number of witnesses. There's a representative or someone who's part of the head of the group, which I can't give you a name, but if you looked up Abuse and Care NZ Jehovah Witness as an example, you'll find some of the articles there. And so they've got someone that's representing their victims in that. So that's been going on since 2018. I didn't know about it. 2018, I was still a fallen witness. I wouldn't have even looked at anything like that because it would have been negative or false, or, I can't trust the media, can't trust the government because it's Satan's system, even though they stand in their positions. God's put them there. He's
God, but yeah, by God.
There. But of course they're part of Satan's system. That was one of the arguments that one of the elders was using when it came to my resignation. Anyway, so I knew nothing about that, but once the October 2021 SFL came out, it's all going back to that October 2021 SFL, I did a search, and there was a Royal Commission in New Zealand. So I saw that, I read some of the documents, and one of the documents was by a couple of doctors, and they'd based it on, or part of it was a review of the Australian Royal Commission. And in there they showed that the witnesses we had, for Australia, these were records that I'm assuming came from the branch, 1,800 victims and 1,006 perpetrators. And the government found no evidence that any of them were reported to the authorities, even in states where it was compulsory to do that, states in Australia. So they found that, and also these doctors, in terms of numbers, they actually wrote in there that in terms of the numbers of offending, Jehovah's Witnesses came in second to the Catholics. So
Wow.
that is
It was found in the Australian Royal Commission.
that was found in the Australian.
That was for anybody that has not heard of that. I think everybody has by now. But
Mm.
anybody new, that was in 2015, and the organization was found guilty, and they were required to do a redress. Did they ever do the redress? Do you know?
Well, yeah, that in the end they did, but they weren't going to. They weren't going to be part
They
of the
fought it.
scheme. But
Ratified.
then the politicians were making a fuss about it. So Jehovah's Witnesses it appeared they were going to get their charity status removed. Once that happened, then next minute they had signed as part of the redress scheme. So that that really got my back up as well. And I even said that to one of the elders when we were talking, that, you know, it's strange they wouldn't do the redress scheme until their charity status was at stake.
Until it affected their pockets, their money pockets.
That's what I thought of straight away. It was the money. So yeah, so that's what happened there. It's just absolutely crazy. It really made me think this is it's an organization that loves money and real estate. It doesn't care about people, really. You know, we have
Numbers.
Yeah, numbers. They keep saying unity and love, but for me, unity is uniformity. If you don't, or conformity, you don't conform to what they say you should be, then, you know, you're out.
You're kicked out. You're kicked out. If you don't conform,
Yeah.
then you're kicked out. And that's how they keep their so-called unity.
Yeah.
Because they keep everybody in line.
Mm.
So going back to the New Zealand Royal Commission, what's happening there? I mean, why don't you go ahead and say how you've been involved? Because you're involved in it now. You've been interviewed. They've talked to you as an ex-elder, what you know. What's going on with that?
Yeah, so that so with the Royal New Zealand Commission, that one because I didn't know about it, because I was still a full-on witness until the October 2021 SFL book came out, I did end up writing to them after I disassociated myself. So I disassociated in April 2022. And I didn't write to them because I was building up courage. You see, it was still like, I'm going to be basically, I'm going against my brothers, because I still thought of them as brothers to a degree. I'm going against my brothers if I get involved with this NZ Royal Commission. So I didn't write to them till August 2022, the beginning of August. And I was, in the back of my mind was, oh, should I be doing this? Should I be going against? But I thought, this isn't about an organization, all these brothers that destroy their notes and, you know, don't tell the brothers and sisters using their own conscience. They can only do something if the branch tells them. I thought, no, this is all about the victims. It's not about me and how I feel about getting my name and face out there. So I contacted them in early August 2022, and I had no reply back for most of August. And I thought, okay, I've done my bit. And it was, you know, it was the sort of wipe the brow. I'm free, you know, still thinking about the victims though. But then basically the 30th of August, one of the lawyers involved wrote back to me, or emailed back to me, and said, yes, we're happy to get your story. And he apologized. And I thought, oh no, now I'm going to have to do something. But he was leaving very early September. So we're at the end, we're already at the end of August. So I put a document together for them. It was like a 32-page document, basically talking about how the policies of Jehovah's Witnesses contribute to CSA. So not actually saying that they're the cause of it, but it contributes to it. And
I read that, and it was very well written. You did a very good job.
Yeah, there's so much more that could have gone in there, but I didn't have much time. It was already the end of August, and I got that document in. Well, I did a draft, sent it off to them, and then did the final version and in by the 5th of September. So there was still work, there was still family, and putting the whole document together was difficult. And then what the lawyer said to me is, do you want to remain anonymous? or were you happy for your name to be out there? And suddenly my heart was beating again, because I thought, oh, I'll do this document and then I'll be named, I'll be public enemy number 1 in New Zealand, because I'm basically the only one with my last name in the country with as part of this organization. So as soon as you say the last name, everyone who knows me knows who it is. I knew a lot of the circuit overseers that were here, basically, because I've been in 29 years. So they would know. And I was friends with that substitute CO and been in a few congregations. So yeah, but then I thought it's all about the victims, not me. So I said, use my name. And I had to sign an agreement or a waiver. And so they've got that documentation, they're using it. And then on top of that, a prominent media organization in New Zealand, this year, I happened to look at a Reddit, on Reddit, so 2023, and this reporter had said they're looking for people who were Jehovah's Witnesses who wanted to know some information on them. So I replied to that Reddit, and once again, I waited for a little bit, nothing happened. But then the reporter emailed me back and said, basically, yes, I'd like to hear your story. So I sent the reporter my document that you've got, the one that I sent to the Royal New Zealand Commission. I've done an addendum to it, which has only got a little bit in there, because basically I've left behind Jehovah's Witnesses and the organisation. It's never been, very few times I've used the word the truth. And I guess that goes back to when I first started studying. I'm going to wreck your interview, Rose. When I first started studying with the witnesses, and I went to my first book study, we were studying the Revelation book. So, the Revelation book with this trumpet blast means this convention, and
I did that thing like 3 times.
Yeah, and I thought to myself when I was studying, these people are absolutely crazy. How can this Bible trumpet blast be this convention back in 1930 or whenever it was? And I was just laughing in my own head, but being respectful because I was at the book study. But I stayed with it because the logic they presented was good to me. But then, of course, the logic is always good if you're using your own publications.
Right.
And also they weren't emotional like some of the churches I've been to, where they're waving their right hand and then calling out praise the Lord and all that sort of thing. I didn't like that sort of thing. And so witnesses met something for me, the logic and the lack of emotion when it came to worship. So I like that. But
Even though the teaching sounded crazy at the time.
For the Revelation book, and that has never left me, even up towards when I was ending and we were doing phone witnessing, and we were all on Zoom doing the phone witnessing. I'd mentioned about the Revelation book and how it was just crazy to me, and I was still, how did a trumpet blast mean this? And so I was saying all these things. I was an elder too, but no one ever said anything to me. They just laughed. And
were you ever around when we got the changes that we were supposed to tape into the book before? Because back then it was all about the publications and the books, and so we would actually have the book study, because it wasn't called Bible study back then, it was book study. And it was like in the 2nd or 3rd time that we were studying the Revelation book during our midweek meeting, the Kingdom Ministry, we got a whole bunch of changes that we were supposed to, and it showed the paragraph and where we were supposed to tape in the new information, the new light.
Yeah,
Were you ever at those?
I do recall something like that, but I recall more when new things came out for elders books when I was first appointed a long time ago in a different congregation, where we always had to update. And
Updates, the updates and the new light and the new information.
Yeah.
Until the new books came out.
Yeah, that's the one. So yes, I
Yeah.
remember a lot of that, but I wish I still had a copy of the Revelation Grand Climax book because
I do.
You do?
I do. I've got my very studied, well-studied copy. So
Mm,
I'm not going to get rid of that.
no. Well,
Almost did. When I first started waking up, I wanted to get rid of all my publications, and I'm so glad I didn't.
yeah, it's really good. We got rid of a lot of ours, but some of them went moldy in one of the houses we were in because the downstairs got damp, and so the books were in there and they got some mold on. We
They
threw
got
them,
moldy.
and I really wish we had them because now that everything's online, they can update stuff at will, and you don't know what the original teaching or truth was.
Oh, they changed everything. In fact, I'm going to be doing a video shortly on that. All the changes that they do and how easy it is
Mm,
to, now that it's digital and they don't have to reprint the books because
mm,
they're not a publishing company anymore. They just can change it digitally and no one will know the difference
that's right.
unless they print it out, but
Yeah.
they don't do that. Going back to what's going on with New Zealand. So has your news clip been played yet, or is it going to be coming out? Is there something that we can tell everybody that yes, you can check it on YouTube or check it on, Google it so that they can see you on the news, what you
Yeah.
have to say?
It will be an online article. The reporter has sent off questions, I'm guessing, to the branch or the PR department. And once the reporter gets the reply back from those, then the article should be pretty close to appearing. And what I'll
They're
do,
waiting for the organization, their PID, their Public Information Department.
that'll be it. And once those come back, then I'll have the link and I can send that through to you.
Okay, I'll make sure that when you do, I'll make sure to put that into the description as well.
Yeah, so there are a number of other elders, ex-elders, ex-witnesses involved as well in that one. So I don't know all of them. I do know one of them because I actually happened to meet him. He's got some videos on YouTube of when he left. He was actually he was in the same congregation that I was in, but he left before we came to this congregation that we were in.
You just kind of passed each other.
Yes, but I knew his mother.
Oh, really?
Years ago. So yeah, he's got videos on YouTube. I wonder if I should quote his name. Well, he's on YouTube.
Are they XJW videos? Or are they
videos? Yeah. So
what is his name?
Paul.
Yeah, what his name?
Paul and Joy Quilter.
Quilter.
Quilte.
If people want to look them up. Yeah, if somebody wants to look them up.
Yeah. So
right.
They're a part of this as well. And the only thing I've ever done is chatted to Joy on the phone because I thought, I'll call them up because I've seen their videos and I didn't know they were part of it until I actually had a chat to Joy, Paul's wife. But Paul was an elder like I was in the same congregation. But he knows everyone I know.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So do they have a number of victims? Do they have specific victims, or is it just because of the policy that they're going after the organization?
Yeah, that I can't tell you. All I know is that they know that we've had four in our congregation, or the congregation I was in, that I disassociated from. So I'm guessing if those numbers were asked from me, and there's secretaries in other congregations, those numbers might have been asked from me.
It'll be interesting when it all comes out, like it did with the Australian Royal Commission.
Yeah, and I don't know if the New Zealand Royal Commission is asking for those documents either. But
it'll be interesting. So it's been going on for quite a few years now, since 2018, you said?
Mm.
So yeah, 5 years going on. So
Mm,
hopefully something will come out of this. It's interesting because I was talking to you, I think it was through email, or maybe we talked about it, what's going on with Hawaii and in
mm,
Pennsylvania right now. I mean, they're coming out of the woodwork, and I think the judge in Hawaii, when she awarded, was it a she? I can't remember. They awarded the judgment of $40 million.
mm.
That made a statement. That was a statement. That
Yeah,
wasn't just an award for the victim. That was a statement against the organization.
yeah. It's sad though. In that case, the Jehovah's the organization settled out of court. So I'm pretty sure that that 40 million was against the actual perpetrator, um, against him, but it's still the same thing with the organization. It just reminded me of what was his name? Explain. I'm forgetting names, you see.
David Splain,
David Splain. He was explaining that when it comes to court matters,
Splains.
explaining, um, should I say mansplaining? Would that be?
He was mansplaining.
He was mansplaining that when it comes to those things that you might settle out of court, and both sides may not want all the information coming out. So all of it, everything that's come out in the videos that these governing body members have done has all added up. And I can, if looking back, I can see why, where child abuse is, for me, it's rampant in this organization. I think even Jeffrey Jackson and the ARC said that it's a problem in our organization, but then he goes, but it's as it is in other
As it in all, right.
yeah,
As it is all organizations.
as if
It's not
it's
supposed to be in God's channel. It's not
Mm.
supposed to be in God's organization. There shouldn't be any. And if it is, why is it being hidden? And
Mm.
why are they settling out of courts? Why do they want to settle out of courts with all of these gag clauses? Because
Mm.
when you get a gag clause, you can't say anything. It can't be
Mm.
made public.
That's
So
right.
it's hidden. It's kind of swept under the rug, so to speak. And so, but I think the more, and because of the internet, and because of people like you who are brave enough to put their face forward and let the governments know exactly what's going on with this organization, I think more and more people are coming out of the woodwork. They're feeling more
Mm.
empowered and not so afraid that, they're not going to get the support they need. And governments, judges are seen through their lies, their
Mm.
lies in court,
That's right.
and their justifications that. So yeah, I think that they pretty much are putting themselves into a corner,
Yes.
and I don't know how they're going to get out of it.
Yeah. Well, the Pennsylvania one is quite interesting. With the 14 arrests, was it? I think one of them committed suicide, but 14 arrests, and they've got how many
5 charged.
congregations?
So far, 5 charged.
Yeah. And there's 300, is there 300 congregations in Pennsylvania, and how many elders have been, are going to be, what's the word for it? I haven't kept up too much with the American case, just with the numbers, but 300 congregations, I think, or more. And then the number of elders that go with that, who, boy, that's a lot. So I'm guessing, have they gone through the whole 300 and they've only found 14, or is it they've only just started? They've only gone
I
through.
think they're just starting because they just this month charged 5 more.
Mm.
So I think what they're doing is it's just part of the process.
Yeah.
Did you hear about that one? I can't remember what his name. He's the one that started it. His daughter was molested.
Yes, I know that one. Yeah.
And what they did to him, they
Mm.
texted out to all of the attendants at the convention, and with his face and his wife's face, making sure that they were not allowed in the convention. And it was such a us against them. They are not part of us. They have nothing to do with us.
Yeah.
And here he is upset because his child got sexually assaulted.
Yeah.
And that's the love that this organization is showing him.
That's right. It really is quite sad. I did watch all of that, and he's brave as well.
Yes.
Coming out of the woodwork and exposing the bad policies and the people. I mean, being an elder as he was, we are part of the problem because we don't follow our own conscience. we follow a book. We follow what's in a book. And then if we don't know how to handle things based on what's in the book, we call the branch. And then the branch will tell us what to do, or give us ideas of what to do. So when you can't follow your own conscience, to me, you're actually in a cult. I can't say it any less than it. You're in a cult.
It's true, because you can't think for yourself. You're not allowed to think for yourself at that point. Even you, like you said, even though it's ringing, you're getting all these red flags and all these bells are going off. There's nothing you can do about it, because you have to follow their direction, even if it doesn't make sense from a human standpoint.
That's the one. Even though they're not infallible, they're not inspired, they're not infallible. Yeah.
They're imperfect, they're fallible, they make mistakes, and they're not inspired.
Yeah.
So where are they getting all of this information? Where are they getting these policies and things that we're supposed to do? They're making them up.
Yeah.
That's the only way, because it's not Bible-based. None of it Bible-based. It doesn't show love at all. In fact, it's the opposite of showing love. And it's people like you that are being so brave and exposing it. And that's why I really was so thankful that you came on this channel, and that I hope you're able to get on other channels, that you can just tell people what's going on in New Zealand, that it wasn't just the Australian Royal Commission. It's happening in New Zealand, just like it's happening in Pennsylvania, just like it's happened in Hawaii. And you can it's just go on JW Facts, and they just have lists and lists and lists of past cases and settlements since the early 2000s that have been going on. So this is nothing new. Barbara Anderson started fighting it in the 90s. Yeah. And she lost everything because of that.
Yeah, and I never heard anything of that sort. And that's one of the things when you've got a hierarchy where, starting right at the top with the governing body, they're basically saying nothing about it. It's apostate lies, bald-faced lies. If they're not saying anything about it, and then down at the lower levels with the elders, they're keeping things quiet because the book tells them to, and it's coming from people who aren't inspired, then
how is anybody going to know about it in the congregation? Exactly. Just as Joe Blow publisher, or me, or anybody else. I had no clue about it. I had no clue about what was going on, and I was shocked. I remember just being sick in my stomach. Actually, I was sick at my stomach at the level that this was happening. How many were being affected and impacted, and not just here in the States, but worldwide.
Yeah.
And that it was being allowed because of the policies from New York.
And given the statement from the two doctors that did the New Zealand, the document for the New Zealand Royal Commission, that we came in second in numbers to the Catholics. That's actually saying something.
That's disgusting.
We're small. We're
really
tiny.
Disgusting.
Yeah. And the Catholics are huge in terms of their membership, and Jehovah's Witnesses are 8.8, and we came in second. So that's really bad. And then following the witnesses, the Protestants, was it the Anglicans came in after? Anglicans or Protestants, one or the other. But we are so small compared to the Catholics. So if this is God's organization, then he doesn't care about children. He cares about real estate, because you can call the authorities with real estate when it comes to real estate. Give us money for real estate, but there's been so much that I've gone through since coming out of this organization, or that organization, because it's not that anymore. It's that organization.
Well, how are you and your wife and your kids doing? How's your son? How are you? How are your wife doing now?
Yeah, we are actually happier than we've ever been. Our marriage is better. I'm not expecting my wife to be the fully submissive Bible wife, the Apostle Paul style wife who was a single man. How does a single man counsel, in marriage and that sort of thing? And that, we follow a lot of, or Christianity follows a lot of what the Apostle Paul said rather than what Jesus said. So we are so much happier. My wife doesn't expect me to be the greatest husband, although I think I am.
She's the best wife ever.
She's the best wife ever as well. So we are so much happier. We're not under pressure. We don't worry two or three times a week getting ready for meetings and going out on field service and preparing for that. We can do other things. We can spend more time together as a family. But I still have to say, I guess it would be the same with any religion, but if I hadn't become a Jehovah's Witness, I wouldn't have met my wife. I wouldn't have had the children that I've had. And we had some really good times being part of the Jehovah's Witness organization. We met a lot of people, and that's really what my wife and the boys miss. Me, not so much, because I wasn't raised as a witness, whereas my wife and the boys were. They miss the socializing, the
Community.
friends,
The community.
community.
It is.
Yeah.
You miss the community, the instant friends.
Mm.
And yeah, that is hard. But then you look back and you realize that all those friends were really conditional friends.
They
They weren't true, real friends. And you thought they were at the time. You
Yeah.
thought that they were your true, real friend, but you stop believing in something, then they cut you off.
That's right. But it felt real at the time, and
It did, yeah,
we did
absolutely.
strike up some good friendships, and we really just enjoyed the other's company.
Once again, I want to thank Ed for sharing what he knows with me so that I can share it with you. I'll link the news, documents, and Cameron's story in the description for you. Please share with as many as you can. These stories and information need to be seen by as many as possible. What the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society are doing is not only wrong, it's criminal. There are numerous ongoing cases right now in Pennsylvania. A judge in Hawaii has just awarded a victim of child sexual abuse $40 million. The organization is, of course, appealing that judgment. But these are not isolated cases. They're worldwide problems. Child sexual abuse is not just a sin, as the Watchtower organization claim. Child sexual abuse is a crime where the offender absolutely should be turned into the authorities for punishment, not just a slap on the hand by the organization. So, thank you for those likes, subscribes, comments, and shares. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Please take care, and as always, thank you for watching.